Hi guys, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. I hope you're doing really well. So I've got a bit of a story time for you today, because I figured it's been on my mind. It's been a video that I wanted to film for a long time, and I've been a little bit apprehensive about filming it. So I think, yeah, I'm just gonna try and get on with it. I'm not gonna lie, this is the third time I tried to film this video. The first time I was using my new overhead tripod and a different lens, and the whole thing just didn't really look right. It was quite far away. I couldn't really get clarity on the zoom, and yeah, it wasn't really working for me. The second time I didn't realise that the whole thing was out of focus. And so this time I realised my mistake. I know where I've gone wrong, and hopefully this will be a much better quality. So if you're drawing, if you're painting, if you're writing, maybe whatever you're doing, get comfy. It's going to be probably quite a long one. Get a cup of tea, and just don't make the same mistakes as me, and we'll all be good. So I'm going to be working on this commission that I've got of this beautiful gun dog. He's got a pheasant in his mouth. I've never drawn anything like this before, so it's and I wouldn't normally take on a commission like this of this size. I normally try and make it and convince the client to go a little bit bigger, but we're working to quite a tight time scale on this. It's for a 60th birthday, so yeah, I'm just going to try and sort of get on, but I thought it would be a really good opportunity to film this video. I was going to do it as a sort of like a sit down, draw with me, sort of like speak to the camera, but I figured that it would probably be a bit more interesting for you to see as I go. So anyway, I'm working on Fabriano Artistico hot press, and I'm using polychromos and luminance pencils, the Caran d'Ache luminance, and a couple of Caran d'Ache Pablos. So let's dive in, shall we? So for those of you who know me, and for those of you who don't know me, I started my art career when I was 21, and I was a dropout of university. I was at Chichester University and I was studying marketing, and I did that for a year and a half before realising that even though I had qualifications already in marketing and I previously worked in marketing when I was in the motor trade, it just wasn't really a career choice that I wanted to take and make sort of like my career, really. So I'd always loved art, and I always wanted to do something, you know, that I really enjoyed, which was animals and art. So I tried to combine the two and make it a career. But the thing is, I didn't really have a clue what I was doing when I left university. I just knew that I wanted to draw, and I guess I just hoped I could figure out a way to make money from it. Now, my family didn't really understand why I wanted to draw, and they certainly didn't see it as a viable career. And I know a lot of you will probably be nodding and saying, yeah, my family are exactly the same. And the only way that I convinced them to let me do it was because the university said, right, you can have a year out, whether you know, and then you can come back in a year's time if all else fails, and you know, just take a year, figure out what you want to do, and then, you know, you've always got the option to come back. So I had that in my back pocket, and I also had a part-time job where I was working for about 25 hours a week at a pub. So, you know, I had a bit of money coming in, so I could still afford to pay the bills and sort of just keep going and sort of having the same life as sort of the average 21-year-old. So when I dropped out of uni, I was in £20,000 worth of debt, which was obviously a lot, and that was only because that wasn't even living fees, because I lived at home when I was at university. That was purely the tuition fees. So it was a lot of money, and I was obviously very apprehensive about making any money as an artist, because all you ever hear is like the term starving artist, and is it even possible to make money from your art these days? I want to tell you that it is, and it's definitely possible, and hopefully with this sort of upcoming series that I'm filming at the moment, you'll sort of get a good idea of how to make a successful art career yourself. Where I had a bit of money coming in, I went to a local art supply store, which is Hobbycraft, and they stock these polychromos pencils, which are professional grade. They are oil-based coloured pencils, and they are sort of, I would recommend them to anyone who is thinking about starting out with coloured pencil. they're relatively affordable. Now, when I was just freshly dropped out of university, I didn't have a lot of money at all, so I couldn't afford to buy the full range. So I bought all the warm grey colours, from warm grey 1 to warm grey 6. I think I bought dark sepia, I bought black, and I also bought a white pencil, because I figured that instead of sort of getting bogged down with colour, I'd figure out how to use the coloured pencils just on sort of grayscale first. So my initial work looks like it's in graphite. It's all been done in coloured pencil, but it was just in grayscale coloured pencil. I also worked on Bristol board paper, or Bristol board, because that's what I thought. Well, that's what I saw other people doing on social media. Now, back in the day, 5-6 years ago, there wasn't an awful lot of other like artists on social media. There was a few, and not that many working in coloured pencil. So I kind of did some research. I saw that the people who were using coloured pencils were using the polychromos, and they were using a Bristol board. But I couldn't get hold of the NA Strathmore, so I just got the cheap Dale Rowney stuff, and to be honest, it was awful, but it did the job. So I was riding a horse at the time, locally to me, and I decided, as a sort of like a part-time project, to draw this horse. And I did, and I put it on Facebook, and people said, oh, you know, whether it was from the yard that I had the horse at, or some people on Facebook were kind of like, oh, would you draw my horse? So I charged them £20 or whatever, and it kind of gave me a little bit of extra income, and it was something that I really, really enjoyed doing these commissions, and sort of friends and family started commissioning me, and it started snowballing. But and obviously I set up a business page from there, and started sharing them more and more on social media. So I had an Instagram account, and I made a Facebook page and things like that. And I think at this point I kind of figured out that another way you could kind of make money as an artist was by offering fine art prints, which would obviously generate a bit more income. So I had a bit of a Google, and I found a local art company, or a local fine art company, who did limited edition prints and offered sort of like the printing service. So I gave them a call and arranged a meeting. Now, I took over some recent work, so some recent commission work, to this initial meeting, and as I said, back then it was just all in sort of black and white coloured pencil work, and from the initial meeting I was completely sucked in. This guy who had the business, he ran it from his house, so it wasn't like in a shop or anything, so you wouldn't know it was there unless you really knew it was there, so to speak. So I would say he's probably in his 60s. He was close to retirement at this age, to be honest, at this point. And I will say right now that the company no longer exists. I think that he retired, and it's no longer a business, and I'm very happy about that as well. So yeah, I took over some work, and I was completely sucked in. From the initial meeting, he told me how fantastic my work was, that he'd never seen anything like it before in his life, and he could certainly help me make my artwork really successful, and put me in touch with contacts that help him promote my work. He said he also had contacts in the racing world, in the dressage world, etc, etc. Now, my work 5 years ago wasn't anything special, to be honest. It was okay, but you know, like anything, when you do something every day, you're going to improve on it. So 5 years down the line, I like to think my work has improved, you know, a fair bit. So, you know, but for him to tell me, after being sort of told by my parents that it wasn't a viable career from a supposed art professional, that he had, you know, and especially someone who had such a wealth of experience, like he said, and showed me sort of like some exhibitions that he'd done. He showed me he had a big portfolio, he had a website where he promoted and sold people's fine art prints. Like, he just seemed so legit. And don't get me wrong, I think, you know, he was a legitimate fine art printer, but he wasn't that legitimate in some other ways. So, you know, looking back, I can obviously see so many red flags, but at the time I was obviously freshly dropped out of university. I had no idea. I just knew that I wanted to make a bit more money from my prints. And I don't know, I guess, you know, as I said, you know, having someone tell you that your art is very, very good, and for someone who's a supposed professional, it's kind of, you know, you kind of get sucked in, and I definitely got sucked in. I kind of thought, well, he definitely knows what he's talking about, so if he definitely knows what he's talking about, then, you know, he can really, really help me. So, you know, because another thing, like, he kept saying to me, oh, I can definitely help sell your work, this is going to be so big, this is going to be so successful. And I remember coming out that initial meeting and ringing my mum and being like, this is so exciting, you know, I could see these dollar signs in front of my eyes. Now, for me, art has never really been about money. It's always been sort of like for the enjoyment of it, but obviously, being honest here, you've got to run a business, and especially, you know, when you're trying to convince your family that you're trying to make it a viable career, you need to be showing that you can make adequate money. So so this fine art printer, he explained the process of how he worked, and how he was going to produce my art and make it into fine art prints, and then he gave me a breakdown of all the costs. So, and he told me then that he didn't approve of scanning artwork, and that he liked to photograph it. Now, knowing what I know now, I don't think there's a lot of difference between scanning and photographing art. Some companies prefer to scan, some companies prefer to take photos. I've personally had two companies. I've outsourced my printing to two companies, and one of them's he photographed, and another company scanned, and to be honest, they both came up very, very nicely. I can't really see any difference myself. I now I do my own printing, I scan it, and yeah, you know, I don't see any difference personally, but I think it comes down to sort of like personal well, it's personal circumstances and what you prefer, if you can see the difference. But I wouldn't get too hung up, because I feel like the people who photograph definitely got sort of like this anal image in their head that they're just like, anyone who scans is going to flatten the artwork and it's going to look awful. I don't think that's strictly true. Anyway, so after he'd done the initial sort of photography scan, he would import the work into Photoshop, and then he would Photoshop it and edit it, he'd colour match it, and then from there he would produce these initial artist proofs, which I could then go and approve if I was happy with like, the quality and just the general sort of like the print process and things like that. So yeah, at this point he told me some of the prices for the process. He gave me some estimates of how much the prints were going to be. And he also, I think at that point, he showed me what paper he'd used. Now, I never saw the actual photography or equipment or the fine art printer that he used. Now, knowing what I know now, I would always try and ask to see the equipment that the company's going to use, if they're local and they would let you. Not that it really makes a big deal, but I would like, for my own peace of mind now, like to see sort of like the equipment. But obviously I like to do everything in-house myself, and if I am going to outsource any prints, then I have got a very good printer that is relatively local to me, that I do trust. But at the time, in all honesty, I didn't really have anything to compare it to. There was not an awful lot of fine printers out there. And I think that was my first mistake, because I didn't shop around. I just, you know, assumed that in my naivety he was a professional fine art printer with a portfolio of clients and a wealth of experience, and that his pricing was pretty standard for the service that he had promised. So I began working with his print company, and he continued to sell me the dream. And he also told me at this point that from his experience, he would always recommend, you know, getting a collection of work together. And when I say a collection, I mean probably about 18 pieces is the figure that he told me. He said, you really want to get 18 pieces of question work together and up on, you know, ready to sell. And I said, that's fine, but I've already got like a Facebook page, I've got commissions that I've booked. And he said, don't do that. He said, obviously, I can't tell you what you can and can't do, but I don't recommend you sort of give much time to commissions. You really want to be focusing on this. This could be huge. I've never seen work like yours before. It's absolutely brilliant. You know, you could be so successful. You know, stop charging, you know, 30, 40, 50 pound or whatever I was charging for commissions then. Like, there's no point. Focus all your energy on creating this print run, and I'll help you make it really, really successful. And so I said, okay, well, and he said, right, I want you to try and go away and create 18 pieces of these, obviously like a question portfolio. So I went away, and I remember speaking to him a couple of days later, and I said, right, okay, well, I'm going to start posting some of my work in progress on Facebook and social media. He said, no, don't do that. You really want to hit the market high. We don't want anyone copying you. We don't want anyone taking your ideas, and, you know, we just want them to be completely, we just want to hit the industry and really, really surprise people. And your work's so good that I know it can be successful. Knowing what I know now, you know, I know that would never work. The way that my prints tend to sell is when I've campaigned them a little bit. So when I mean campaign, I mean like put a work in progress up. So say I was going to create prints of this puppy here, I'd take the initial photo of maybe its head, then I'd take another photo the next day, and then I'd just keep posting work in progress photos, and people kind of buy into that. And not only do they buy into the artwork, they also buy into you as a person. So I didn't have any presence. I'd started and put my Facebook page up probably a couple of months ago. I think I probably had about 500-600 people on there. It wasn't really, it wasn't big at all compared to what it is now. And I just didn't really have a clue, you know. I believed him. I said, fine, okay, well, you clearly know what you're doing. I clearly don't. You've got all this experience, so I'll listen to you. And yeah, so he said, as I was an upcoming artist, it was really important for me to like hit the artwork with a big collection of equestrian prints. So anyway, I got to work and started creating all of these sort of black and white equestrian dressage kind of prints, and I started taking them over because he obviously wanted to see the work in progress, and he started storing them at his house for me, and he was like, these are so beautiful, keep going, you're so talented, and just kept sort of like just selling me the dream, really. And then after a couple of months of doing all this work, he said, right, okay, well, I want you to talk to you about how we're going to size these prints, and I think they need to be big, they need to be impactful, they need to really stand out, so I'm going to photograph them at a really high resolution. I recommend you don't go a size below A2, which if you're international, when we're talking in centimetres, is like 60 by 40, so they're pretty big. And he said, but I really recommend you going for this size. You don't want to, you know, you don't want to not have impacted like an impactful statement piece. Like, we really want like statement pieces for your work because it's so beautiful, it needs to stand out. He just kept saying it, and I kind of was a bit like went along with it, and because I was like, well, he clearly knows what he's talking about, and who am I don't know I don't have any experience in this, and so I started. Obviously, I took about 3, 4, 5 months out to create this body of work, and some of it was pretty awful, some of it I'm relatively happy with. Even to this day, I'm like, oh, that kind of worked. Then other bits is absolutely appalling. But there was no bits that he rejected. Like, I worked with a fine art printer in recent years who, if I did a bad piece of work, he'd tell me I'd done a bad piece of work, and he'd be like, I'm not printing that for you, I know you can do 10 times better than that. And that's kind of, I mean, it's harsh at the time, but it's kind of the honesty that you want. You don't want someone who's just going to take your money. You want someone who's actually going to be like, look, you know, this isn't your best work, I know you can do better. And obviously you have got to build a relationship with somebody for them to be able to sort of give you that feedback. But it's really important, especially when, you know, you're trusting someone to produce prints of your work, that you build a good relationship with them. So yeah, he then started doing all the scanning and sort of photography work, and And then he started saying to me, right, okay, because I don't think I paid a deposit at this point. So he started saying, right, okay, I need you to start, you know, paying some these invoices. And so he started giving me these invoices. And the quotes that he'd initially given me, he hadn't included all of the breakdown of the pricing. No, in hindsight, it was a verbal conversation that we had, and I wrote all these prices down in a notebook, so I had all the prices in my head, but he'd included other things. So for example, he said to me, right, okay, I'll charge you X amount to scan the work, but then he didn't tell me that didn't include him to edit and proof it, and obviously I didn't know at the time that was a whole different process. So he had then charged that, and there was lots of other little sort of like, he charged a different price for different types of prints, and obviously different sizes, which I would expect, but he didn't give me a full breakdown. He'd say, oh, it'll be around this price, but then what he didn't tell me is that he'd charge VAT, value added tax, with 20% onto everything. So these invoices started coming through, and they were thousands, and he'd done a lot of print work for me by this point, and again, I hadn't put any work out there, so I was just spending and didn't even have a clue what was happening. I was beginning to get scared at this point, because I was thinking, oh, okay, I'm already in all this debt from university. I've got a little bit of money, inheritance money from my granddad when he died, and I know I've got to use that was meant to be for a house, but I know I've got to use that to pay all these invoices, because I really want to be this successful artist. Not only that, this fine art printer had also said to me, well, obviously you need a website, so I can put you in touch with a website designer to build you an e-commerce, so a shopfront website. So he gave me this guy's details, and this guy was quite reasonable. I think he charged me about £1,200 for an e-commerce website, which is pretty standard. It was a WordPress website, and my parents bought it for me for my 21st birthday present. And I had this website built. I had all these invoices coming in, and they were a stupid amount more than what I thought they were going to be when I initially started having the meetings and working with this company. And I think, just being completely honest with you, I think the final figures, I think after all the invoices were paid, one thing I will mention is that, because he said to me, I only think you should do all these big prints, and I kind of sat down with my parents one day. I said, I'm in floods of tears, saying I don't want all these big prints, and I don't think they're going to sell well, like, because what if people haven't got the wall space? I think they'd be a lot more sellable if we got like A3 maybe. So instead of 30 by 40 instead of 60 by 40 prints. And so I contacted the printer, and he got really, really angry, and he was like, well, you've signed this thing saying that you're gonna get all these A2 prints printed, you can't go back on your word. And my dad had to go around there and say, look, just because she signed something doesn't mean that you can't change what you've initially agreed to print. He said, you haven't pressed print on it yet, we don't want it to do it, so can you please change it? It's not too much to ask, surely. If the whole print would have been printed at this point, it'd be different, but it hadn't been. So he eventually agreed, and so we halved the amount of the bigger prints, and we got some smaller prints made. And so these invoices started coming through, even the smaller prints, and they were thousands. And I think off the top of my head, these invoices started coming through and I think in total probably cost me, the whole process probably cost me about £13,000, so 13,000, which for a university dropout who already in 20 grand's worth of debt was a stupid amount of money. And I remember going home after spending all this money, and I had about God knows how many prints made, because that's what he told me to do. He was like, oh, you don't want to keep printing on demand, I can't turn around the prints that quickly for you. These are going to sell out so quickly that you're going to want to get them all print, at least 10 of each printed at one time. I think I had 15 of some prints, I had 12 of others. It just made no sense, and they were well printed, the quality was good, but Knowing what I know now, I mean, he was very expensive as well compared to how I think. So, for example, I think an A3 print cost me about £18, all included, about £18, and to print. Now, I was heartbroken at this point, to be honest, and I felt like I'd been scammed out all this money. I didn't know. I thought I was blaming myself for it massively. I was thinking, I felt awful. I was thinking my granddad would be so disappointed that I spent all this money, and what if it doesn't work out? I'm going to be absolutely devastated. So I then tried to campaign all these prints. So I had the website built, the website was live, and then I tried to create this this sort of like Facebook post. And I remember sat there, it was a Friday night, and I sat there at my computer and I drafted this post telling everyone that what I'd been up to. Now, bearing in mind, I've taken myself pretty much off social media for about 4 or 5 months, and because I was so new to it initially, I don't think anyone really, I think people kind of thought that I'd given up on my art career. I hadn't really, it was I'd kind of stopped, and I wasn't doing it anymore. But people didn't know that I'd been working on all these prints for the last couple of months. So I did a post, and I think it probably got about 10-15 likes maybe. It got a couple of comments saying these are lovely, like what a lovely collection of work, or something like that. Absolutely zero sales. And I think, because one thing I will say is that he told me to price the prints. So he told me to price the A2 prints at £95. He told me to price the originals at thousands of pounds, and because he was like, I can help you sell these. I know they can sell, don't short sell yourself. And also he told me to price the A3 prints, so the smaller ones, at £65. So £95 and £65 for the two sizes of prints. And that he was going to put my name on and all my prints on his website. Now, I will say right now that I didn't make a single sale off that website, and that it was, I think, a little bit of a scam. Now, in hindsight, because there was other artists on there, what I should have done, and what I definitely do now, is I definitely contact those artists and just be like, look, I've been sold this story. How successful have you been using his online sales? Because obviously he's going to take a percentage of whatever sales. So, how successful is it? Is it worth me doing? Blah, blah, blah. But me being naive and me being very sort of sucked in, I didn't do that, and I didn't make any sales. So I think it took about 6 months for me to make the first sale, and at that point we'd just gone through Christmas. I was really, really unhappy. I'd lost all this money. I'd lost all my commissions because I'd shut the commission book, and I was contemplating going back to uni, but I knew if I went back to uni I'd be in a stupid amount more debt, and I just didn't know what to do. I was still working at the pub, but I was so unhappy. I was thinking, I'm going to be 22 soon, and I've got nothing to show for this, apart from a stupid amount of black and white horse prints and a lot less money in my bank account. Well, nothing in my bank account, to be honest. So I was contemplating just trying to put all these prints online and just doing like a flash sale, and trying to sell them for what I bought them for, and just trying to get rid of them. I guess for me it was like, if you were to go through a terrible breakup, you just want to get all of that person's stuff out of your life. It was kind of like that. I just wanted, the prints were fine, but I didn't feel connected to them. I didn't feel like they were part of they were definitely a big part of my art journey, but I just didn't, there was no love for them, because they just brought back such a bitter taste in my mouth almost. So even today, 5 years down the line, I've still got a fair amount of them. They still sell every now and then. They are not available for obviously 65 or 95. They are for sale for what I bought them for, because I would just like, just to not get rid of them. It sounds awful, but I just would like to see the back of them, to be honest. And people, you know, still to this day, people do buy them. As I said, like I've got them retailed. I think the smallest ones are sort of like £20, and they cost me sort of £18 to produce. So I'm literally selling for what I bought them for. And I mean, they're good quality. They are a nice print. And I know a lot of people have been very, very happy with the purchase and with the you know, the print quality, and the, you know, they are a lovely print. They come with a certificate of authenticity. Like, they've been done professionally, but they just cost so much money, and I felt like so despondent. I was like, how on earth am I ever going to make any of this money back? You know, I've got all this debt, I've got I haven't got any commissions coming in. Like, how on earth am I going to turn this around and try and make this a success? You know, the website wasn't really working. I wasn't happy with the quality of the website because it wasn't on WordPress. I found it really, really difficult to edit the website. So I ended up in 2017 building my own website on Wix, which cost a lot less and was a lot more affordable to maintain, a lot easier to edit. And it was definitely much more sort of like a beginner friendly website, which is definitely what I needed. And so, yeah, I think in total that whole experience was nearly £15,000, and I have very, very little to show back for it. In an ideal world, I'd just at least like to get the money back that I spent on all that stock. And one thing I will say is, obviously I think I've mentioned it previously that I still got a lot of the bigger prints left. The smaller prints, I haven't really got that many. They have sold over the years. When I've sort of promoted them, say, look, they are for what I bought them for. You know, if anyone fancies a equestrian print, then come. Like, I've got these on the website, kind of thing. And you know, people do buy them. But again, that's only because, you know, I've got a following of the amount of people that I've got now, and I've worked really, really hard to sort of get my confidence back. And luckily I did find a good printer afterwards who kind of restored my faith and restored my trust and allowed me to sort of show me the right way to do things. He showed me that I should always sort of, you know, that, you know, the pricing shouldn't have been lied to about different costings. Everything should be like crystal clear. And this guy basically wasn't a fraud, but he definitely saw me as a bit of a cash cow and sold me the dream. Absolutely didn't deliver to any standard, really. I mean, I remember after the first like couple of months of having those prints sat in stock, I then went and did like a tax sale, so like a car boot sale, just to try at a local horse yard, just to try and sort of push my name out there a little bit, and no one bought them. I was absolutely despondent. And you know, when the first sort of like a year of your art career, when you spend £15,000 and you have absolutely no sales, and you get the odd commission for like £40-50, it's very, very despondent. But I want to tell you right now that it is possible to turn it around. It is possible to make a successful art career out of your work, and it is definitely possible to sort of change your mindset. And because it's so easy, you know, I'm not gonna lie, I was quite, maybe I wouldn't say depressed, but it made me very, very unhappy for a very long time. And I hope this doesn't sound like, I know this is quite like a negative video, but it's only because I'd rather warn people about, you know, not getting sucked into companies that are just only there to take your money, rather than actually give you a good service and sort of care about you as an artist. I've never met a company like that, but again, in all the experience I've got, it made me only trust very, very few people. I trust my framers, and I trust the other art printer that I use when I want to do sort of large format prints. But I did buy my own printer probably about 2 years ago now. And I've recently actually done a Patreon video for my business tier, which I will link down below if anyone's interested in watching that, all about fine art prints. And I literally go into all the details, from all the complicated things that you might want to know about sort of certificates of authenticity to you know, open edition versus limited edition, to help to sell your prints, how to price them, and basically how to try and sell them, because I think your artwork's one thing, but it's how you market them is another thing. Now obviously I should never have listened to him. I should have campaigned them and sort of built up the momentum, and maybe I'll be in a different position now, because I think it's not the actual product. I think it's more of your mindset that really makes a difference when it comes to yeah, I generally think it's mainly your mindset when it comes to selling a product. If you haven't got the belief that it will sell, I definitely didn't have the belief that any of those prints will sell, but yeah, I mean, as I said, I hope that's kind of I think that's kind of covered everything that I wanted to say. I know it's been a bit of like a bit of a ramble, but it is possible to bounce back. 5 years down the line, I've definitely learned a fair few lessons, but I'm very, very happy that I have learned those lessons, and I'm definitely feeling a lot better for it now too. You know, I'm glad that I went through those situations, and I could definitely came out stronger, and it's definitely taught me a few things. So I do believe that you kind of got to go through those sort of hiccups to really learn your lesson, and it's definitely made me a lot more able to spot someone who's not got the best intentions for you. But yeah, anyway, I think I've taken up enough of your time now, so thank you so much for watching. I hope you've learned something. If you've got any questions about anything I've discussed in today's video, then obviously just drop me a message on Instagram or send me an email. I'll be happy to help you in whatever way I can if you're going through something similar. Or if you have any experience with anything like that, I will obviously link my Patreon below if you'd like to join my teaching channel. And I hope you're having a really good day, and I will see you in the next one. Thank you so much for watching. See you later. Bye.